Today, on the Basketball Manitoba podcast, we have Coleen Dufresne. Colleen was the head coach of the University of Manitoba Women's program for 17 years and then served as the athletic director for another 15 years. Additionally, she coached at the University of New Brunswick for 4 years prior to heading to Manitoba. During her time leading the Bisons, they achieved 2 U Sports silver medals, 2 bronze medals, and made the national tournament 9 times and the conference playoffs every year she coached. The pinnacle of her coaching career was bringing home 3 national championships with the Bisons in 1988, 1996, and 1997. She was named National Coach of the Year 3 times and Conference Coach of the Year 5 times. She has coached at the World Championships and Pan American Games, including bringing home a silver medal. She is a former national team basketball player who represented Canada in the 1976 Olympics in Montreal. Colleen was inducted as a member of the Manitoba Basketball Hall of Fame with 4 different teams. She is a member of the Manitoba Sports Hall of Fame class of 2017 and the Canada West Hall of Fame class of 2019. She was the recipient of the YMCA Women of Distinction Award in the category of Recreation, Sport, and Active Living in 2005. Colleen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Darcy. Great to be here.
So, when I just rip off all of your accomplishments, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
How old I am? How about that?
Yeah, well, I guess it definitely ages you because you can't accomplish all those things unless you've lived a little bit.
Well, you know, as everyone says, you never accomplish things by yourself. So, you know, it's all the great people. That's the other thing that comes to mind when you list things that I've been able to do, and it just brings back the wonderful people that I've met along the way that have helped make those things possible.
I kind of wanted to start the conversation with a memory, and I like to do this because a lot of the people that I've interviewed so far, I actually know them. I've met them. They've somewhere along the way they were involved in my life, even if it was just brief, or even I just knew who they were. And so my first memory of you when I was an 18-year-old kid, and I just started at University of Manitoba, my first year playing with the Bisons, and you were the athletic director at the time. And I don't have any specific memories. I know we interacted quite a bit. I know down the line, I definitely came to you for advice, which I don't really remember specifically what it was, but the overall memories that come to mind, big picture, is just knowing that you were someone that athletes could come to and be comfortable talking. You were there to say, hey, you know what, I can come and ask you a question. And you were just a natural leader. You were just there. You were very, very present. And that's how I felt, at least. And that was my first kind of memory of you ever. And so I kind of wanted to use that as a way to ask you, what are your first memories of the game of basketball?
But thanks for those lovely comments, Darcy. When I was a late person to the game. I started I started in Quebec, right? I'm originally from Montreal.
Okay.
So I started playing a little town called Dorion, which is west of the city, 25 miles west. And we had a huge school, 150 kids in our high school. English Catholics in Quebec, you know.
Yeah, not a lot of you.
But we had, it was the beginnings of the school, the first years of the school. And so we had a phenomenal phys ed teacher, Mr. Maisonneuve, and he was my first mentor. He was fabulous. But so I think I want to say grade 8 was, because we went 8 to 11 in Quebec at the time. And okay. Grade 8 was when we started, might have had a few games, but that was the first time I ever played basketball. I never went to a basketball camp. I never had that pleasure. They didn't have them around me anyway. Mm-hmm. Or they had them and I didn't know about it. I don't know. But my first memories were Mr. Maisonneuve, and we had, I think, 8 kids on the team. But we had a good squad. We really had a good team, but he was disciplined. He made us disciplined. He worked fundamentals. And that was the biggest thing that I learned from him right off the bat, was that fundamentals were critical. He was a hockey guy. He wasn't even a basketball guy, but he had the passion and the love, and he was wonderful. So yeah, that's my first memories of basketball.
So you started playing in the 8th grade, and then how quickly was it before you actually, loved the sport or started playing it all the time?
I think, I loved all sport pretty much. I just loved being active and playing and competing. I think that's the big part. I've never, and still I'm not a person who likes to just exercise for the sake of exercising. That's not me. If you're keeping score, then to me that's fun, and I can get into it. But
I know
anyway.
your type. I know people like you. You got to compete.
Mm-hmm. But I just went blank on where we were going.
No, I was just asking you how, when did you really start falling in love with, so you started playing a lot of different sports, but
Well, I think basketball was the one in Quebec. We could go from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. So we didn't have volleyball part of the year and basketball. They ran concurrently. So you play it the whole time. And for me, that was awesome. In the summer, I played fastball, ran some track. But after grade 11, I went to Cégep. It was the first year of Cégep. A lot of firsts in my life. First year of our English Catholic high school, first year of English Cégeps. I went there, and it was funny because I tried out. I went for trials. I said, well, I might as well try. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's going to be so many players here. I'll be, I don't know what to expect. And I went, and I was pretty good. So I made the team and had a wonderful coach there. She's still one of my best friends. Norma Payton is her name. I don't know if you know the name Richie Spears. Does that name ring a bell at all?
Doesn't science kind of, but no.
Yeah. Norma and Richie got married at Center Court, Dawson College in Montreal. But anyway, basketball fanatics. She was fabulous. And so again, because of the way she coached and the way she cared for her athletes, I think that affected me as well. And I thought, boy, I really like this. And so I continued to play that year. And then I played senior women's, then got recruited to the University of Ottawa, and played there for a bit. Well, there's more years of playing, but those were the early years. Warren Sutton, I don't know if you know.
I know that name, yeah.
Warren was the coach who recruited me to Ottawa. He played, I want to say, at Sir George Williams in Montreal. He was an American, I imagine one of the first Americans to come up. Great player. And he coached not every year of my 4 years at Ottawa, but off and on there. And he was another really good coach in terms of teaching defenses. And he allowed me, which I think really helped me in my playing career and my coaching career, he allowed me to call offenses and defenses.
Really?
In the game, during the game. So that was fantastic. And from there, I played provincial team in that period of time with Quebec, and then national team. And then after '76, after the Olympics, I started teaching high school. Taught high school for 4 years in Pointe Claire, Quebec, and started coaching there, of course, as most high school phys eders do. And I thought, I really enjoy coaching, but I want to coach at a different level. So I went back to university, played my 5th year at McGill, and started a master's program in sports psych, and then was interviewed for the coaching job at UNB in Fredericton. My good friend Joyce Slip had gotten married and was going to start a family, and she was coaching both basketball and field hockey and couldn't do both. So she chose field hockey. Lucky for me, the job opened, and so that's how my coaching career at the university level started.
Wow. Yeah, and I think
sorry, Darcy.
No. This is like I tell every guest, this is what I want. I don't, the best conversations are one where you don't answer the question just okay. That's the question. The end of it. So we want to just keep going with it, because at the end of the day, I'm probably going to ask the questions that you're telling me I'm going to ask anyway. So Just keep them going. It's like I said, I'm here to sit back. If I'm not talking a lot, then I think it's a good podcast, because I'm just the host. And so if I'm doing a little bit of talking, it's better. So, well, you mentioned a few coaches and kind of mentors that kind of just that were there for you, introducing you to the game and kind of along the way. And something I always like to think about in my own life, and I like to ask people is, what are some of the lessons that some of those early mentors taught you, whether it be about yourself or about the game of basketball, that maybe you still even to this day kind of have in your mind, and even potentially even taught, I mean, I would say likely taught to some of the athletes that you coached along the way?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've had some really good mentors through my playing days, and I mentioned a few. What they brought to me: discipline, organization. Norma was incredible. And I remember hearing Ross say, be prepared as a coach. That was advice he was giving, right? Well, I mean, learning from them that every minute of every practice was planned. And to this day, I cannot go into a gym and just run a practice off the top of my head. I can't. I have to have it organized. I mean, I can go off script as we go down, but I would sit at home in the evenings and plan all my practices, right? Anyway, so being organized, caring for your players, caring for what they do off the court, on the court, but not being their friend. You know what I'm saying? Like knowing that you're there for them and that you care for them, but you're not going out to a bar with them, that kind of thing, right? So that level of professionalism was always there. And I appreciated that and learned from that, I would say. There's so many things that you learn from your coaches.
Oh, absolutely. But I think you brought up some key ones. And I think that like the organization or the leadership, the type of leadership role that you play, it's probably much more of a parental role more than anything. In that, like, typically parents don't go to the bar with their kids, but they're there to listen, they're there to advise, they're there to guide them. And it's up to the player at the end of the day to, take the guidance of the coach or not. And I mean, a lot of times if you're not taking that guidance, you're not playing. But I think those are super, super good points. And I think the other thing that you said that I really liked, and I've heard this kind of as a narrative by a lot of coaches is they're not just basketball players, right? Like you're actually like as people, and you mentioned that. And I think that's super important. And I think most of the coaches that have had success know that, and they understand it at some level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. And I think another thing you just touched on was the whole leadership piece. And I think, through the years that I've coached, I've had some really wonderful leaders who led me, but then I had leadership come out and be developed in the players that I coached. And that's always fun to see. And they don't all lead the same way, right? So that's interesting. Some on-court leadership, you think of TL, and I mean, boom, she's the general, she's given her. And then you've got those who lead off the court more so than on the court. And they're the good people to have in your locker room. And so you learn about that, and you learn to trust your players, and hopefully they trust you and what you're doing. And I like to think that's what one of the big reasons we were successful at Manitoba is that we did trust each other and know what we were capable of doing. And I think believing in each other was such a big part of who we were.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to continue down that path, but before we go there, I totally forgot. I want to ask you, your coach was letting you call plays on offense and defense. What position did you play?
Well, it depended who we were playing against.
Okay.
I was not often the point guard. Nope. More 2, 3, 4, sometimes 5.
Okay. Yeah.
Sometimes I was the one if I had to be, but I think I more of the defense is what I controlled than the offense. I'd say the offense well, sadly went through me, but it was.
Well, that's why you got to call the plays, because you were getting the tape.
One, that's for me. Two, that's for
exactly.
me. No,
Exactly.
But more of the defense. I loved that part of it, is changing up the level of the defense and the type of pressure. Oh, I just loved calling that. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, the defense, I would say, more than anything, is kind of like when you're talking about, I guess, chess. That's where I think you really start to, because people can call plays and you can look at the D, and I think a lot of people have a good, not a lot. I mean, coaches have it's an easier sense to like manage your offense, I would say. But when it comes to defense and having the type of defense that can shut down or manipulate offenses a certain way, because if you're winning the defensive battle and you're actually manipulating the offense and getting them to do what you want to do, that's a step ahead of just, offense, we're running this offense. And I think it's such a strategic thing that a lot of people overlook, is their defensive strategies. And I mean, not as much now. I think it's fairly developed, but I think a lot of young coaches miss that point.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right. But when another first, when I was at Ottawa, that was only the second year of the women's program there. In fact, we are celebrating 50 years of women's basketball at the University of Ottawa. We'll be doing it in February, and one of the members of our team is being inducted. Glenn Turner, best friend when I was in school there, she's being inducted into the Ottawa U Women's Basketball Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And so, anyway, that's pretty exciting. But for me at Ottawa, I didn't know any better. I didn't know that players don't normally call and change things. I didn't know. That was just the way we did things there. And
yeah,
and it was so much fun. And I also remember I learned through my years there, and then certainly when I first started coaching, that I was looking ahead offensively into the plays, and I knew where everybody went. Like, that was just how my mind worked. And I knew when the cutter should be coming, where they'd be coming from. And but when I started coaching, that was difficult for me, that the players didn't think that way all the time. And when your point guard can't remember what they're doing and what everyone's doing, that was a learning curve for me to try to get players to understand and think ahead in what's going to happen and why you're doing certain things offensively and defensively, for sure. But, to go back to defense, I think if we were to look at what Manitoba was known for, it would be defense, the defensive pressure, and then as a result of that, our transition game. So those two things were our strengths. I don't think our strength was, quarter court running A, B, C. Like, I don't know. Well, we did have some success with that. But certainly,
really?
When you have TL, you just move everybody out of the way. Okay, go. But no, and she's not the only one. I will name drop a few other players.
Hey, name drop as many as you want.
But defensive pressure and transition. And, we have Marjorie Kelly, for heaven's sake. When you have her at the front of a press or she's just so quick and has great reaction. She was wonderful. Jennifer George, who came from New Brunswick, as a matter of fact. Interestingly, when I was at UNB, and Joyce Fromson, the late Joyce Fromson, was athletic director at Manitoba, and she had recruited me to come and coach there. It was their first full-time women's.
A lot of firsts.
The first-time women's head coach, and she was phenomenal. But anyway, I went to my players at UNB and said, you are welcome to come with me, except for one. And I just didn't think Jen would be comfortable leaving New Brunswick and her family. And then 2 years later, Coach, I want to come. Okie dokie. So she was an all-Canadian. I mean, and made us a little bit stronger with great shooting. Anyway, so she came, but her arms are super long, and she's quick and she's smart. And so she played the front of our 1-2-2 full and our 1-3-1 half. And it just, anyway, I want to play now. But yeah, I had some really, really strong defensive players along the way. Well, Marge Kelly was Defensive Player of the Year, for heaven's sake. So anyway.
Suffice to say, defense was the first kind of the foundation, I would say, of your team success, likely, is what you're trying to say.
I don't think there's any doubt there. Yeah.
And I think that's what I was kind of the point I was getting at, is a lot of young coaches miss that point. They think that the offense is the key. And as you mentioned, the thing that you get from defense is the easiest baskets in basketball. Because once you start getting transition offense from turnovers, it's over. Like those are the easiest baskets you will ever get in a basketball game. There's no one there. I mean, you're just running, right? So, that now we're just getting into strategy. So
I'll tell you a story. You want a story?
Yeah. Yes, I do.
We were playing in Thunder Bay National Championships, and we're playing Doc Ryan. I don't know if you know that name, but Doc was a national team player for many years. And also coached with the national team program, and Jack Donahue for many years. And he was coaching the women's team at St. FX in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. We had them first rounders. And so, you call your coaches. Back then, you didn't have the luxury of having all this video access for in prep. You had to call coaches and, get them to tell you what the other team was like. And if you were lucky enough, they would send you a VHS tape and you could watch a few games. But anyway, the advice we were given was, you don't want to run with them. You don't want to run with them, Okay, so thank you very much. But that's our game, right?
Yeah,
so
what are you going to do?
Yeah, no, that's the way we're going to play. So first round, I want to say the score, it's the highest scoring game in women's basketball university championships, 109, and their score was in the 90s, but it was unbelievable. And you think, well, couldn't have been any defense. Absolutely wrong. It was a fantastic pressure-filled transition. It was just awesome. But yeah, we most points ever scored. So
wow. And again, that's a credit to your style of play right there, right? So and that's the thing. People think defensive teams, they're a defensive team. That means that they don't score. That is just not true.
Nope.
It's not true. So I think that's a huge part of it. And again, we're going on a tangent here, which is fine. But I think a huge part of that is the fact that like younger coaches are watching the NBA, and then they're using that as like their reference point when like you're in collegiate, you're in high school, you're in club. It's not the same game at all. So when you're playing those games and then you watch NBA games, like they don't press, they don't do any of that stuff. It's not part of the game. So you get these young coaches and they're just like, we just do this, and they just focus on the offense, right? And so it's, but that again, that's a completely other conversation. The young coaches, if you're listening out there, I think I've beat the point down a little bit. Focus on defense, get your defensive philosophies, your defensive understanding, because it's important. It really is.
In the NBA, like you say, you're not going to see that pressure deep. But when you come down to the end of the season, then you see it. Then you see them up their game, and then they're going to be up. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, the playoffs, I mean, they're a different animal altogether for sure. You see them doing stuff. But
carry on.
No worries. No, this is exactly it. Because now we're just having a conversation. This is what I love. But again, I'm going to try to shut up here. So what I wanted to ask you is, so you'd mentioned how you kind of got into coaching, went and got your master's, you were coaching in high school.
Didn't get my master's, just did 1 year of the program. It was a two-year program.
Okay.
And I was going so that I could coach at the university level. I wanted a master's to do that. But I got the job. So I had a choice. I could either say no, thank you, and finish the second year, or I could go and do what I was going to do.
What you wanted to do anyways.
So I went, I did courses at UMB, and then anyways, but I never did the thesis part. I should have gone a different route, but anyway. So
I think it worked out.
But never got that done.
I think it worked out okay.
It did all right.
So the question I just love asking it. And so, I mean, again, you've coached for so long, so you interacted with all these different people, and you were mentioning earlier, everyone leads differently. right? And so that's an obvious statement, but I mean, when you've truly experienced it, you've probably seen so many different styles of people, that played the game under your tutelage. But you had tons of success, as we said, super consistent, lots of winning. But what were some of those philosophies and approaches that you took to kind of maintain that like the sustained success throughout all those years? I mean, you have players 3 years to 5 years, and you need to now, teach them your philosophies, right? You need them to understand, like you had mentioned, whether they be obviously philosophies as far as like how we want to, how you want to see the floor and how you want to play defense and offense, but more so, because I did interview Cheryl Jean-Paul, and she mentioned you a bunch of times, and even now she's coaching, and she's like, says that sometimes your voice is in her head, even to this day. Yeah. Well, she's having success, so it's fine. This is working out for her. But I guess my question is what are some of those philosophies and approaches that you took while at Manitoba that just kind of led to that success over the years? How did you build your teams? What were you focusing on early in the year? And I mean, if you just kind of speak to that, just generally, I know the question is kind of open-ended, but.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is that every day we are going to work as hard as we can to make each other better. And that was part of the philosophy. There's no room for being in practice and not working every single drill the best you can. You might not have a great day, but it's not for lack of trying, not for lack of effort. And I think from the get-go, trying to teach players that, okay, I can score on you, or I guess I could take it easy on you because I don't want to score on you every time because you're my teammate and I don't want to make you feel bad. Park that out the window, beat her every single time if you can, because that's going to make her a better defensive player as she tries to stop you, right? So our practices were intense. So that was a big one, I think. I think I loved practice as a player and I loved practice as a coach. I think there's, you learn so much and you get better by working hard. So we did a lot of hard work. We were always prepared in terms of what drills and what we were working towards. And from the beginning, I would try to make players understand why we're doing what we're doing, and then let's get at it, right? Don't just do it because I said to. You do it because this is going to happen or that's going to happen, and then you do this or you do that. So anyway, we worked hard. Another piece was I wasn't crazy about conditioning for conditioning's sake. Cheryl might disagree, but we did a lot of drills that caused us to cover the whole court, right? So we were getting fit while working on a skill. And so that, I think, makes you better at the skill, because in the game, you're going to be tired. And so we did a lot of that kind of work, and a lot of breakdown drills. But other philosophies, I think respecting each other, respecting yourself, was a big thing from the get-go. When I first came to Manitoba, they had just hosted national championships for 2 years in a row for the women. And their team was good. I thought their team was good. They had Jen Finch, Esther Johnson, Brian Pallister, Shannon Jonason. Let me just think here. Anyway, they had a nucleus, I thought, of solid players, but they weren't having success as much as I thought they could have had. But it's hard when you have part-time coaches. It's just a different mindset, right? And so from the get-go, when I got there, my expectations were always very, very high of everything, I would say. That's probably kind of the way I am. I have high expectations. And so, we'd come into the gym and I would expect you to be there on time. I would expect you to be there every day. I expect you to be there with the right attitude. I expect you to be wearing the gear that we gave you, which was something different. They didn't have that in the past. And I went, what? Anyway, there were just things. This is a program, and we are going to build it to be one of the best in the country. That's the goal. In order to do that, here are the things we got to do. And we were at Bisons gym. Did you ever?
I never got to play there, and I unfortunately I don't think I've ever stepped foot in it, but I've heard story after story after story from Bisons. This is like the legend of Bisons gym.
Absolutely. And it was a shooter's gym as well, right? I don't know if anyone's mentioned that, but if you could shoot well, you were going to have success in that gym, but and you could run that way side. But it was a fabulous gym. I loved it. And only one court, right? So when you're practicing, it's only you. It's only your team. You're not like, now 3 courts and there's 2 of them doing volleyball, and you had to learn to coach differently anyway. But I loved Bisons. And so a couple of things, I guess, respect, hard work, just challenging yourself every day to be as good as you could be. Work hard. Yeah.
Well, and again, a lot of these same themes come up in when this type of question gets asked. The thing that I love the most, because people will always, work hard. I think people, there's some obvious ones, right? The one that I think isn't as obvious, even though everyone says it, is, and you mentioned it, is the why part. Making sure that your players know why you're doing something. And I think, and this is a lesson that I learned, just to everyday life. Is if you don't know the why, you're going to be way less effective in doing the thing that you're trying to do. And I think a lot of people try to teach people how to do stuff without the why.
Yeah.
And the good teachers give the why, because now I can conceptualize what I'm doing in my mind, and it makes sense. But and I think that's where, in the past, maybe I've come up short as well, as, before I understood this idea is, if you can tell somebody why you're doing something and they understand the why, they will now be able to take that on and do it way, way more efficiently and with more kind of like vigor because they get it. They just get it, So I love that. I love that thing. And I think that seems to be something that has come up in all the people who are successful that I've interviewed. They all say that it's the why, teach the why, and
well, what else? I think over the years, as I developed as a coach, I think I learned as well to talk to players, because sometimes they'll do something which wasn't what you wanted or expected, right? So instead of saying, don't do that, I want you to do this, I would ask, why did you do that? And then sometimes they had a really, really good reason. And I said, I like that. I get it. Let's keep going, right? Because sometimes their thinking was better than mine, right? Okay, good, let's do that, and so, I would try to encourage them to be thinking for themselves as well, right? So you come up with something that works better for us, I'm all in.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So, well, that's a good point. And it's so important. And then you kind of mentioned there, like you asked the why, and earlier on, again, you'd mentioned with the different types of players. So I'm actually curious if there's something that stood out for you over all these years from coaching that you learned just about people generally. Something that, you went into coaching and then you're like, oh, and then over time, you start to figure kind of things out. I mean, we're different, but we're not all that different, right? There's different versions of people out there. And so are there any things that kind of stood out, that things that you learned about people through coaching?
Well, that basketball is a wonderful vehicle to develop good people, right? It's going to bring out the best in them. And if you start with good people to begin with, that's a great idea,
Makes it easier.
Yeah, but you learn that different players respond to different kind of incentives, and I'm not so sure that I was the best at knowing what motivated everybody, that's for sure. But learning that they motivate each other is another really important thing. And that's the friendships that are developed. And I mean, I'm sure you know that our players from back in the early 80s, that first championship team, we still get together, and the players, oh gosh, yes. And then 95, 6, 7, the other two back-to-back championship teams were just inducted into the Sport Manitoba Hall of Fame just a week ago. So, and there were, I want to say, 13 or 14 athletes from those squads, which was almost everyone. And Mike Hickey, Mike, do you know that name?
Don't.
No, okay. Mike Hickey is a New Yorker who came up and played at Sir George as well in Montreal, and he coached at Concordia, a women's basketball team, very successful program, great coach with the national women's team program as well for years. Well, when I was on mat leave, which I wasn't really on mat leave, but that year and the year after, Mike came in to help coach. And so he came back with his wife to celebrate the induction. But I unfortunately was in Ottawa watching it via Zoom, but but again, all that just to say that the friendships that tie these women together, and the things that you learn and go through is very different from anyone else. And that's some advice that, players out of high school, I don't think I'll play at the university level. I want to focus on studying. And I just want to smack them. I want to say no, because yes, it's important to study in university. There's no question, but you are going to learn so much more about life and people if you are part of a program. There's just no comparing that journey, Anyway, so I think that's a big thing that we learn, that carries on through life. Like some of my best friends still remain those I played with a long time ago and then coached, and those young women became my friends after. They weren't as afraid of me,
Yeah. No, and that's such I think anyone who's played basketball, especially collegiate basketball, they know that. You played with teammates that you have, and same thing, like there's still friends that I have anytime I'm in town, we still catch up, Christmas, whatever. It's like you're always there. And
they're all booking flights to Costa Rica.
I'm trying to get them out here. But no, it's a real thing. Like you go through those. I mean, it's almost like again, people always, they say it's a microcosm of real life, but it is real life. There obviously you go through all the, you go through challenges, and you have to overcome, you got to work hard and those are all things. But when you very rarely outside of family, do you do that with other people, not at that level. Right. And when you go play basketball, and like you said, how much time do you spend with them? Like every day you're practicing, you're traveling, now you go into the war with them, you're in the locker room after. Now, of course, you're going to hang out when, you know what I mean? So it's like all the time you're together. Yeah. It is a special, it's very special. It is a very, very special thing. But so speaking of that exact thing with players, you are one of the few people who've represented Canada. I mean, it's a very few. The list is not large. I mean, with basketball specifically, and you did that at the Olympic Games. And I'm just curious. I mean, I know, as we talked earlier, you said I was dating you, so it was a long time ago, but it's still such a special moment. So I'm curious of like what type of feelings and thoughts come to mind when you think back to those Olympic Games.
Well, they were in Montreal, which was my hometown. So that, makes it even more special. So you're not only just playing in Canada for Canada, but Montreal, Canada. So, family was close by, which is, not something that most national team players get to experience, because we're usually as Canadians playing somewhere else, Yes. But it was pretty phenomenal. The opening ceremonies, walking into the stadium in Montreal, and just, the roar of the people. So that's pretty darn special. And
Mm-hmm.
we had centralized in Halifax for 6 months, training there 3 times a day. Can you believe that?
Wow.
But yeah, we trained 3 times a day. So,
Wow.
and mandatory taping. So we had both ankles.
Really?
Oh my God, your skin was raw. But so, and we trained at St. Mary's University. In their gym was in the bottom of a church. Anyway, but Halifax was so good to us. It was great. So coming to Montreal, just wearing that uniform, putting that Canadian flag on, it was pretty darn special.
Yeah.
I remember one of my first experiences with that national team in '74, and '75 actually, Pan Am Games in Mexico City, coming into the stadium. That was the first roar that I had ever heard, and people love Canadians the world over,
Yeah.
And so we came in and we got a huge ovation, and I just like, oh, goosebumps.
Yeah.
So multiply that by 10. That's the goosebumps you get when you're in Montreal, in your own city, in your own country. But
Yeah.
and the environment of an Olympic Games is like nothing else. It's pretty darn special. Yeah.
Yeah. So back then, how would have you made the squad? You just got selected, like, hey, you're a great collegiate player, you're on the team, or did you have to go to a tryout? Like, what was that process like?
Yes, we had to try out. So
Okay.
every year we had tryouts, and I got invited to a national team tryout before I even knew we had a national team. Remember, I came from a small town.
Yeah.
I didn't even know we had a national team. I didn't, and so I got this invitation, and the first time I went out, I didn't make it. Well, I did and I didn't. That's another story. But so I came home and I was determined. Said, I'm going to do this. And the following year I did make it. So in '74, '5, '6. But every year you had tryouts where they brought in guest coaches, etc., and they're evaluating you. And usually you'd have 2 training sessions a day, and then the third one in the evening was scrimmage. And I remember in the final tryouts for the Olympic team, they would read out, we were going 4-on-4 and full court, 4-on-4, bango for whatever, 2.5 hours. And they would read out the matchups. So they'd read bang, so-and-so, do. I played every single scrimmage, every game. I didn't get to sit out. So I guess they were seeing, is she tough enough? Is she going to crack? Or whatever it was, right? Little did they know, I love to play.
Yeah, you're like, this is great.
Go to the park. I'm next and I'm staying, You're not getting me off the court. But yeah.
That's that competitiveness that you were talking about earlier.
I mean, well, we all were, to be honest,
For sure. You kind of have to be.
But yeah, so that's how, we have tough tryouts. Yeah, but it was fun. Loved it.
Who was the coach at the time of that team?
Actually, Jack Donahue, I know you know Jack Donahue, and you've spoken to a wonderful coach. He coached us for a year. Norm Vickery coached for a while, but for the Olympic Games, it was Brian Heaney, who was the men's coach at St. Mary's University.
And it's funny, I know Brian Heaney just because he did like announcing work for a while.
Yes, he did.
That's how I know him too. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I had to ask you about that. I mean, again, there's just so few players that played in the Olympic Games and represented. I mean, people that represent Canada, but you play in the Olympic Games, that's special.
Very special. I mean, not to take away from it at all, but it was in Montreal, and we were the hosts, so we were in. It's not as it's much more difficult now to play in Olympic Games because you have to win your way into it, right? But no, I mean, we weren't terrible, but we were. Ross, I remember him saying in his interview that one of his teams said we were short, but we were slow. Remember he said that? we were not that. We were by international standards, we were short as a team. We had a lot of players who were around the 5'10" height, so that's me. And Sheila Strike was 6'3", Sylvia Sweeney was maybe 6 foot. And then, we had our little guards, but we could play, and we had some good shooters. And we were pretty tough, I would say. But we're playing against Czechoslovakia, who's got a 6'8" post, and the Americans were big. But we played the Russians, who had the tallest person in the Olympic Games. She was 7'4". Semenova. Oh yeah. They were huge. They were huge, and they had never lost an international game ever.
Wow.
So they were pretty darn good. And I remember, just a quick aside, Semenova, the big gal, I had seen her following the Olympic Games at tournament somewhere in Eastern Europe. I forget where anyway, but she had, it was before the Olympic Games, but she had an Olympic ring on her finger. So how we communicated, I don't know, but I got the ring off her finger, put it on my thumb. It sat on my thumb. And so she was a big lady.
I was going to say.
You remember, I got to guard her. Picture that.
Wow.
Colleen, 5'10", guarding the 7'4" gal. Like, come on. I couldn't even get around her. Like, oh my God. But anyway, so
wow.
we were out-heighted.
To say the least.
From everyone, but
7'4". I mean, if you're 7'4", I mean, you're one of the biggest humans ever to live. I mean, you're up there. Wow.
Yeah. And she could hit a foul shot.
Well, well, then there you go.
Lay up in a foul shot. Dang.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So I had to ask you about that, but I do actually want to get back to the coaching, because I'm just going to say something here, and then you're just going to tell me what the first thing you think of. So the rivalry that you had between Winnipeg Wesmen, what's the first thing that comes to mind when I say that? Well, yeah, what? I don't know.
Well, when I first came to Manitoba, Brandon was strong, Winnipeg was strong, Manitoba was good. So they had 3 pretty good teams, but Winnipeg was really used to winning. I'm not so sure how favorably they looked at us being the new guys there, going, we are going to compete. We're going to compete with you. I suppose in the beginning was fairly healthy competition, but it developed into something that wasn't necessarily that healthy. I don't think we liked each other. Our coaching now, when I say each other and we, I mean pretty much everyone, not just the coaching staff. The coaches weren't friends. No. Tom and I have a much better relationship now. Tom Kendall, who was their head coach, and Tanya and I have a better relationship than when she was playing.
I can imagine.
No, it was difficult because for years we in GPAC had Brandon. I'm going to take it back. Brandon was not as strong as Winnipeg. We developed into stronger programs. They had some really good years. Don't get me wrong. They had some really good years, but then it became Winnipeg, Manitoba, and Regina, who were the strongest. And there was a year or 2 even where we were top 3 in the country.
Oh wow!
You can have, and 3 of us could have been 1, 2, 3, maybe 2, 3, 4, but no, we were incredibly strong programs, all 3. So when you're playing in GPAC, which after Lakehead moved back into the Ontario League, we had 4 teams. And so you are banging heads with the top teams in the country every weekend. You don't think that creates rivalry? And oh my goodness, yes. One year we played Winnipeg for the bronze medal at national championships. It was our 10th matchup of the year. 10, because we would go to tournaments back then. There were a lot of preseason exhibition tournaments that we would both be invited to. People wanted those teams there. And we hosted tournaments as well. And we'd meet in the final. So anyway, 10th time, happy to say we won that one. But that was one of our bronze medals. But there was some great basketball being played in our city, I'll tell you, for a long time. In the province for a long time. Yeah.
So and again, like you could probably go to scan your memory banks and there'd be so many different moments or memories, but is there one that stands out in the rivalry more than any of the others?
One? Did you want that one?
But, something that stands out in the rivalry specifically.
Okay. When we broke their streak.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Darcy, that was unbelievable. Like women's basketball was the number one ticket, thing to do in Winnipeg. And, they were 88 game winning streak, and they were right there ready to break it and break the, North American record, et cetera, et cetera. And TSN was covering the game. There was all kinds of media all over the place. It was Winnipeg, 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 Winnipeg. And they deserved that. Don't get me wrong. They deserved it. They were really, really good. But we were number 2 in the country. We weren't schleps.
Yeah.
And there's kind of like, and they're playing Manitoba. Yeah, okay, all right. And they had beaten us already that year and would eventually beat us again. However, I think our players took it a little personally that we were almost being ignored, But so it was a phenomenal environment. Well, I shouldn't say that so quick. It was a great environment in that the gym was packed. Yeah. The Duckworth Center was packed. They were hanging off the track up top. It was just incredible. And the few Manitoban supporters that actually got in there were loud, but anyway, it was great. And our kids played fantastic. TL, Rose, they all did, Larissa Krell and Vicky Neufeld. They were great. They were great. And, we're near the end of the game and I'm going, we've got a shot at this. We've got a shot at this. Yeah. And we eventually, we did win the game. We broke their streak. And there's a picture that Walt McKee had hanging on his wall of our bench right after the win. And I'm telling you, some of those kids had a vertical that I never saw before or after. They were just,
that moment where everyone's jumping, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, it was exciting for us, disappointing for them, for sure. But it was a moment that all of us will remember. And if you were wearing brown and gold, it's a happy memory. Yeah. I got so many texts. No, I didn't. There were no texts.
I was going to say.
I got emails and phone calls and, voice messages from a fair number of friends across the country, coaching colleagues who were just so thrilled for us and stuff. So, it was a pretty nice, nice memory. Where were you?
Say the least. I don't know where I was, to be honest with you.
School, yeah. Okay.
So just so the people who are watching the podcast can see, can you stand up and show the shirt you're wearing?
Oh, sure.
Just so that we're aware. See it. There you go. You got the Bison shirt.
Repping the Bisons.
You came representing. So I just wanted to make sure that the Bison supporters out there see that, and then the Wesmen supporters also get to see that as well as they hear that story.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. I love it. I kind of went on a limb and assumed that would be, one of the biggest moments in the rivalry, but I didn't want to outright ask it. I wanted you to say it, and I was happy that you did.
Yeah,
so.
Sandra Carroll almost hit that shot. I'm telling you. just inside half court. And Sandra was a phenomenal player, right? And boom, and it went bang, bang, bang. Whoa! But anyway, Larissa Krellin hit our shot, and it was awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a phenomenal finish to do it that way too. Just amazing.
Then they kicked our butts at nationals in the final, but not by 12, 15, they won that national championship. Which would I rather win a national championship or that 88 break the streak? Probably the national championship, but that streak is a good second.
Well, the cool thing is you know what? If you would have maybe broken their streak in the national championship game, that would have been the only way that would have been sweeter, right? Like if they would have kept winning all the way, and then you were the ones that did it there, because it would have been, I don't know how many games they would have won at that point, right? If they didn't lose.
Yeah, but I got to tell you though, Darcy, there was a little motivation for us too. The day of the game, the program, the game day program. Had a congratulatory message on it to them for becoming.
No way.
Oh yes, way. And so that kind of helped us, motivate us.
Well, you know what?
A whole lot of motivation to play hard, but that was kind of a little boost.
No kidding. And I'm not going to bring up any names. I've seen this happen before. And I'm not sure who was in charge of making that decision. I'm sure they probably didn't fire them, but they probably never did that again in their lives. So what the heart, we're going to win. Do not do that. I've seen it end poorly many times. Mm-hmm. So we're getting close to the end. I have a couple of things here, and I know
no, we have to go. No,
I know, right? Well, a couple more things here I kind of want to touch. And again, I used to ask this question, and it used to be a player, and maybe it is for you. But what people tend to end up doing is just saying, there's this player, and there's this player, and there's this player. So I'm actually going to ask the question, but I'm going to kind of describe, I guess, the sentiment that I'm searching for in the question. And maybe I just have to ask a better question. But the question, just as I wrote it down, is just, who are some of the most memorable players that you've coached? And if there's more than one, that's great. But they don't even have to be the best players. They're memorable for specific reasons. And I think a lot of times when I've asked the question in the past, people just start saying their best players because they were all stars in this and they were all stars in that. But I think we've all, even in my limited time coaching, I think I coached for 10 years, and I met some players who were special, but they weren't necessarily the best players I've coached. And they're memorable for these other reasons. And I think that's kind of the question that's in the way that I asked the question. Are there some players out there that, there's special moments that you still think back to, like, wow, that was different. That never happened with anyone else before, that you'd like to kind of share and share with us?
Wow, there are so many wonderful players.
I know.
And I'm going to answer this in actually two different ways, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So, you said not necessarily top players, but I'm going to, I think, give you maybe my starting lineup.
Okay.
And not, and these are players now. These are the best players, not, okay. And some of them, of course, not all of them wonderful people, but, T.L. Johannesson, Ann Smith, Marjorie Kelly, Kim Berthollet, Jen Finch. I got more than 5 starters. How do you?
I was going to say, well, you have a
Jennifer George, and then Vicky Neufeld. Like, okay. Oh my God, the funniest elbows in history. And I've probably forgotten some, but that's just some of the incredible players we had. But as those who I think about are those who put a smile on my face every time I see them. And Megan Dixon, Megan Johnson now. I would look forward to seeing her just walking down the hall every single day. And I still look forward to seeing her if I get an opportunity. She's just such a wonderful human being, Cheryl McComb. Cheryl is a principal now, but she did coach for a while. And her daughter is actually a Bison now. Nice. Autumn. So another wonderful person, Jana Taylor, who you can't help but laugh and enjoy your life a little bit more when you're around her, you know. Oh my God, there's so many. Carol Plain Hosegood, just an incredible human being. And I'm going to forget so many. There are so many. And because they not necessarily are the best players, but they are the best people. They're just, I love to laugh, which doesn't always fit with the intensity that I bring to a basketball court, but
Yeah.
in between drills, let's laugh. But so someone who can put a smile on your face and just brighten your day. Anne Shimnowski, Adrienne Toogood, those two gals, for a little while, we would practice at least once a week at Bisons gym, starting at, I want to say 7, maybe even 6:30, some ridiculous, stupid hour in the morning. We had one practice, but those gals, Adrienne and Anne, couldn't get to practice because there were no buses. And of course, they didn't have a car. There were no buses that left that early for them to get there. So they slept at my place the night before. So I had two of the players at my place so they could get to practice on time. But two just wonderful, wonderful gals. So, oh dear, there's so many. I love them all. But that bunch. Oh gosh, isn't that terrible?
I know, and this is. I asked this question. I feel like now people because it's like, okay, I can't forget anyone, and I think people will forgive you. I mean, you've coached a lot of people, a lot. You have.
And you interviewed Cheryl Jean-Paul. Cheryl was a very different type of player. Challenged me. She was way more cerebral than I ever was or will be, and so she was a different, challenging, fun kind of individual. Though fun is probably not the right word. Now that sounds negative. I don't mean it to be that at all. Just different. She hit a half court shot in the game. It actually was further than half. But anyway,
on the other side of half.
Talented, gifted athlete.
Oh, absolutely.
But you know what? One other thing I want to bring up. These are wonderful players who impacted my life. Like when in 1995, my son was. Well, I had my son, and that's when Mike Hickey came in. But that same time, I lost my mom. So Nick was 7 weeks old when Mom died. And that team was just so important to me to get through that period of my life. And I'll remember and appreciate and love that about them. But also through these years, the parents that we had around our group were incredible too. And, it's different now. I tell you, now the parents want to know everything. They're super involved. They're like, that did not happen in my coaching career. I'll tell you that. No. They didn't, I don't think they wanted it to happen, but we never got ever talking about playing time for their kids. That just didn't happen. Supportive. They were at every game. They were wonderful. We went to nationals. We come into the team room before heading to, we go out, the vans are packed with balloons that they'd all stuffed in there, and the locker rooms all decorated. That's the kind of parents we had. They were just fabulous. Anyway, I just want to give a little shout out to the parents and to all those wonderful players and assistant coaches. Laurie May, Daniel Mack, he just a fabulous assistant coach. He worked with Rick Suffield for many, many years, and then saw the light and came to the women's program. But I just appreciated his wisdom, and he was great. And then Carol joined us, Carol Plain, Patty Phillips when we first started, and she was great. She had played my first year there, a little point guard, but very, very, very smart, very helpful. It's just Joel Femin. You must know Joel. You want stories of Bison East? Give Joel a call.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've definitely heard some stories from Joel.
He's got a great memory. But, he worked with Joe Uggams, worked with us for a year. Great player, and his sister played for us. So anyway, there's just so many wonderful, wonderful memories that I have. Yeah, I'm grateful for all of it.
Yeah, and again, we're super grateful to be able to have this conversation and then share this with people, because something that I mentioned, now again, you're not necessarily in the basketball scene anymore, but when I started out the conversation, I had mentioned my first memories of you, and I had the same conversation with Ross. I said the same thing. When you're young, you don't know anything, and you're just a young person. But you come to find out later that all these people who are doing these things, obviously, like, most of them play basketball and they've done some amazing things. And there's legends just like right there, and there's all these. There's just so much knowledge, and so I think this is important because we've actually received emails, and I've received DMs and Instagram and stuff like that. People who are coaching, and they're like, I listened to every episode. Thank you so much, and they're so grateful. And these are younger coaches or people. So I think we're having an effect. And so when someone like you comes on and gets to share these types of sentiments, I think it helps young coaches, or even coaches who are going through the grind. Because coaching's a grind. You're out there coaching, and it's like sometimes you feel alone. You're coaching high school, but these types of stories allow people to kind of reassess and understand that the coaching is about people. It's about the people that you're going to interact with, because that's essentially what life is about. It's about having those quality interactions and being appreciative of them. Because I think that's the one thing where people get so hyper focused on winning. And yes, you want to do that, but along the way, there's a journey, and you're going to meet all these fantastic people. And so I think maybe prioritizing some of that a little bit more is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And so I think that's the sentiment that I'm getting from you. Like, you can just go a list and people, and you're thanking this and this. And you actually started off the conversation saying it. I said, how does it make you feel? And when I list off all your accolades and all that, and you said, well, just the people that were there with me. It wasn't me on my own, right? And that is the case for everybody and everything. Always, it's about people, right? So that's something I like to highlight. I think it's kind of something that I take personally, and I always just make sure people understand that. So on the note of that, you've given us so much. You've given us, you've told your stories. You've given us tons of coaching advice, the way that you coach. Now I'm going to ask a literal question, and it can be something that you already said within the interview. It can be a new piece of information, something that comes to mind. But we want to, I like to ask and extract something that's like tangible, and it can really help somebody, right? So the question, I'm just going to read it. It says, what are 3 pieces of advice that you'd give to coaches who are young and have just started to coach? What piece of advice would you give to them that you think is critical? Because they're fairly new. They're coaching high school. They're coaching club. And they're just young. They're likely going to be young people, right? So, what would you tell them?
For coaches, I think I'd say, surround yourself with good people. And that's not just the players. Like, you want the best players you can get, but having good people as players is critical. But I in terms of your coaching staff, if you're lucky enough to be able to have a staff, don't be afraid to have someone work with you that knows more than you might in the beginning, because you're going to learn from them, and you're going to develop that way. So don't be afraid to be around good, strong people. It's the best place to be. You can mentor others later. Now, bring people in who can help you get better. And I would also say to do things, jump in all the way, right? If you're going to do something, do it well. Do it the best you can. Give it everything you've got. And you'll reap the benefits of that more than you can ever imagine. So good people, do the best you can. That's 2. What am I going to do with my 3rd one? Advice to coaches. Enjoy the journey, make friends. Some of my best friends still are folks I coached against, not all of them, but you would battle. Kathy Shields, I love her to pieces. She was one of the best coaches in the country, and we would dogfight national championships. And yet after the game, you could go and have a pop, and just chat and be friends. And that's what it should be about, I think, whether it's high school or university or whatever level it is. Be in the battle at the time, but when it's done, it's done. And that would be some advice I give, I think.
That's perfect. I think it's a great way to wrap it up. We appreciate your time, and thank you. I mean, it's been great to catch up, and I hope you're enjoying the nice Florida weather. People are listening right now. Both Colleen and I are in very warm temperatures, so I am definitely telling you that so you feel bad about yourself and get out of Winnipeg as soon as you can. But I hope. Hey, we spent those summers there. We died and in the winters and getting into your car and starting and doing all that stuff. And I don't envy them at all. But no, I hope you're enjoying retirement. And actually, I want to ask you early on, and you had mentioned before we leave, you mentioned, like, are you coaching at any level still? Are you helping out?
No.
Not at all. Okay, because you had mentioned, you said, I still can't go in the gym without planning a practice. And I was going to say, wait, is she coaching again? Is she back in the gym?
No. COVID kind of took care of that. No. Well, after I retired from coaching, I coached club and high school, mostly for my son and for boys teams. But I never really got back into. I'd do some practice sessions. I'd go into maybe Megan's or something and help that way. But I didn't get back into it. And now I'm a little selfish now. I don't want to give up all that time because basketball runs when it's cold out, and I don't want to be in Winnipeg.
Oh, hey, I don't think anyone will hold that against you. Like, you put your time in, and so now you can do things like this podcasts that hopefully can help coaches and reach out to people. So, okay. On that note, we will say goodbye, and thank you.
Hey, can I give one more little piece of advice?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And it's not for coaches; it's for female players.
Let's hear it.
I think girls have, certainly in Winnipeg and probably everywhere, have a tendency to not believe in their ability to play and to compete, and don't. I think as a result of that, don't have the confidence and aren't able to reap the benefits that we've talked about for the last hour and plus about just how wonderful it is to be a part of a team. So my advice to girls is to, hey, go and play. If you get a pickup game, don't wait for. Girls tend to wait for games to be organized, right? To play club that has them competing, and they're not. Hubby.
Hey.
They don't.
Guest.
They don't just get out and play, whereas we'd go down to the park and 3 of us just play, or 4, and just play. And so my advice to girls is get in there, just play as much as you can, outdoors, indoors, and because you're gonna love it, and you'll get better, you'll be better, and you'll be able to do things that you never really thought you could, but you should.
Perfect. Okay, well, on that note, we'll say goodbye. No, it's perfect. This is exactly, again, this is one of the reasons why we're having this podcast, because again, you have insights and we want to share them with people. We want to share them with the future, right? So, and to be all part of the basketball community that I think is fairly strong. So I appreciate you
interjecting and saying, wait, hold on, I have another message. So
I'll call you back in an hour. I'll think about more.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, on that note, we'll say goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay,
Enjoy.
bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share this series, and reach out to us with your comments on the show. Thanks again for joining us.